Welcome. I'm so glad you could join us today. This is the first episode in our series on Secure by Design. So over the course of this series, we'll explore what this design approach means, particularly for network security and firewalls, and how it helps reduce cyber risk, especially as we enter that AI era of attacks. I'm Amelia Foss, and I'm joined today by two of my esteemed members of our product team here at SonicWall. We've got Rakesh Ramesh and Asif Mushtaba joining me here today. So let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with a look at the key trends and challenges shaping today's threat landscape. For this episode, we'll be paying close attention to credential compromise and identity-based attacks. Then we'll introduce our Secure by Design approach and what this really means and why it matters. And then from there, we'll get specific. We'll walk through practical features that directly address credential compromise, and we'll show you how these work in a live demo. Then we'll wrap up with Q&A, so definitely bring your questions, put them in the Q&A chat window for us. Let's go ahead and get started with the presentation. All right, so if we look at 2026 so far, one thing is clear. The threat landscape isn't just growing, it's accelerating. And no surprise to probably anybody on this call, but AI is dramatically increasing, not just the speed and the scale, but most importantly, the efficiency of attacks. Today's attackers are really focused on quality and overall optimization of attack results. So this means that we're seeing cyber attacks and data breaches get more targeted, more precise, and most importantly, more effective. But on the flip side, when we analyze how breaches are actually happening, the leading entry points kind of remain consistent. It's misconfigured networks, it's human error, and it's credential compromise. And this isn't really that surprising when you consider that many organizations are still relying heavily on manual configuration and human intervention, including things like privileged access accounts and enforcing password hygienes, other items, manually hardening devices, tracking firmware versions, etc. So in an AI-driven world, security really can't depend on perfect setup or perfect people. When attackers are using automation, machine learning, and AI to exploit these mistakes at scale, the technology needs to be built to withstand at its core. With the right security measures hardened into the platform when we deploy from day one. And that's really the foundation of Secure by Design and what we're going to explore over this three-part webinar series. So Secure by Design, this is more than just a catchphrase right now. Recently, CISA issued a sort of a call to action to the tech providers of the world, not just the cybersecurity vendors, but really the entire technology industry to do exactly this, start building cybersecurity into the foundation and the design of the product and the technology from day one. So breaking this down to network security and firewalls, Secure by Design means that the product deploys in a secure state by default. It reduces attack surfaces by reducing complexity and being easy to use so as to avoid those costly configuration errors. It enforces strong authentication and access rights by default. And it provides actionable visibility into the overall health, maintenance, and setup of the network so that the security teams can respond confidently when it matters. And firewalls being that critical internet-facing control point, it's crucial that they are configured to protect against attacks to the absolute best of their capabilities. If an admin account is compromised or firmware is outdated, the entire network behind it can be exposed. So beyond some of the elements we just talked about on the previous slide, like authentication, eliminating risky defaults at the firewall level. Secure by design also means you have continuous checks on firmware and configurations, and that administrative access is controlled and governed. So at SonicWall, our commitment to secure by design shows up not just in the way we're engineering our products, but across everything we do. On a product level, it's the prioritization of our security services platform that unifies our solutions and provides the tools and the ease of use tailored to each individual customer's needs. It's in our security engine and the way we think about active protection. It's also in the way we show up for our customers by reducing complexity in network security and just ensuring that our customers of really all sizes have access to quality protection and strong value over that total cost of ownership. And lastly, it's in the way we work with our partners. Our partners are an extension of our team, so it's critical that we provide them with the best tools to standardize protection, reduce liability, and focus on outcomes. And that's what secure by design truly means in practice. So with that said, we'll jump into a focus on credentials and securing access. We encourage you to check out the other sessions in this series happening later this month and in April. The next one will look at reporting and visibility and how these tools are structured to provide operational assurance. Then in April, we'll look at security at scale. So our, multi-tenant architecture and how some of our newest features help maintain secure networks across multiple sites. So particularly the MSPs on this call, you're not going to want to miss that one. And so with that, I'm going to invite Asif to take us through what this looks like in the real world. So Asif, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Amelia. So security is no longer just about blocking traffic. It's about ensuring that identities accessing the traffic are trusted. And our releases focus on secure by design, as Amelia mentioned, moving away from manual reactive security to automated proactive protection. With enhancements across SonicOS and our network security manager, we're embedding automation directly into the platform. This means less dependency on manual intervention, fewer configuration gaps, faster remediation, reduced human error. We're helping you move constantly reacting to incidents to preventing them by design. This is where let's first talk about the Credential Auditor. So credential reuse remains one of the biggest vulnerabilities in modern security. Credential sprawl doesn't just happen overnight. It builds silently, reused passwords, exposed tokens, forgotten service accounts, and stale privileged accounts accumulate across environment, each becoming a potential entry point. Without a clear visibility and automated control, security teams can't enforce least privilege or understand the true blast of a radius in case of a breach. That hidden gap is exactly where attackers thrive, often without even triggering traditional alerts. To solve this challenge, Credential Auditor was released with SonicOS 7.3.1 and SonicOS 8.2.0, which automatically compares login credentials that involves local users, LDAP radius users, and pre-shared key for your IPsec tunnels against known compromised databases. But it doesn't stop there. Credential Auditor is also available within Network Security Manager. Even if your firewall is running SonicOS 7.3.1 or another unsupported or another supported version without the local Credential Auditor feature, NSM leverages its built-in Credential Auditor, continuously monitors credentials and alerts administrators. This means centralized credential exposure monitoring, version-independent visibility through NSM, and automated alerts without requiring per-device configuration. Think of it as an identity risk sensor running across your entire deployment. What does this do for you as a security admin? Detects exposed credentials before attackers exploit it. provides centralized visibility through NSM, reduces breach risk dramatically, converts a potential incident into a simple password reset. That's proactive identity built into the platform. Moving from identity towards remediation, which is an important aspect of identity. Today, for an MSP and an enterprise managing hundreds of firewalls, remediation at scale is operationally very heavy. Manual password resets, device-by-device policy updates, inconsistent MFA enforcement takes a significant amount of time. With NSM, remediation becomes centralized and automated. From a single pane of glass, you can trigger a bulk password reset, enforce TOTP remediation, and apply changes across your entire deployment. What this means is it now takes less time for an MSP to fix an issue. It improves SLA response, lowers operational overhead, consistent security posture across your customers. Security at scale should not require scaling your headcount. That's what we are solving here. Moving ahead to an auto update feature. An unpatched firmware is one of the most exploited threat vectors. With auto upgrade, SonicOS, your firewall always listens on a critical channel by default. What this means is whenever SonicWall releases a firmware on critical channel, the firewall downloads it, installs it as per a configured schedule. So no manual intervention is required. If your organization prefers a little more controlled cadence, you can switch to a stable channel. When SonicWall releases a firmware on stable channel, again, the firewall goes, downloads, installs it as per your defined schedule. You remain in control of the timing without sacrificing automation. Auto update operates independently of management architecture. Whether you're managing your firewall through NSM or running them standalone, the update mechanism works the same way. Auto update reduces the time between a vulnerability is discovered and remediation happens, shrinking the attacker's window of opportunity by automating patches. This improves consistency across devices, reduces human error, it eliminates configuration drift, and scales protection without adding operational burden. Security patches only matter if they're applied. With channel-based automation and scheduled deployment, your firewall doesn't just protect your network, it protects itself continuously and proactively. Finally, I wanted to quickly touch base on the brute force login protection. Today, attackers don't manually guess passwords anymore, they automate it. Credential stuffing, brute force, botnets continuously hammer your login pages looking for weak or reused credentials. With the latest enhancements in SonicOS, brute force login protection is enabled by default. What this means for you is repeated login failure attempts are automatically slowed or blocked. Login rate limiting is active out of the box. The firewall protects itself against brute force attacks without requiring configuration. No tuning, no custom policies, no dependency on administrators remembering to enable it. This is intrinsic protection, not an optional feature anymore. Security today isn't about controlling traffic only. It's about trusting identities and automating protection so your environment is secure by design, not by chance. On this note, I would hand it over to Rakesh, who will walk you through the demo of how these features work in action. Thank you.
Thank you, Amelia. Thank you, Asif. Thank you for walking us through Secure by Design, our commitment to it, and what features we have built so far. In this section, we're going to look at the features that Asif discussed. How do they operate? How do they function? How can you configure it at scale? So the first thing that we want to start off with is credentials. So you've heard about credentials being a large risk. And the industry stats report that about 1 in 3 breaches can be traced back to a compromised credential or a weak credential. So in order to eliminate that risk vector, we've designed Credential Auditor in 2 steps. One is on the SonicWall Firewall, individually managed say locally managed, you can enable Credential Auditor, which will prevent an administrator from ever creating a local user, as an example, with a passphrase that is already available in a publicly known compromised database. So an admin is not able to create something, and that's our first layer of enforcement. Say you have a fleet of firewalls, and managing a firewall one at a time doesn't scale for you. Our management platform has another layer of the Credential Auditor feature, which runs the scan automatically, agnostic of the firmware version the device is running, and agnostic of the device generation. So this works across all generations of SonicWall firewalls and any version of the SonicOS firmware you're running on the device. So very specifically for the demo, I have these three devices running the 7.2.0 version, which predates when the feature was actually available on SonicOS. But you can see that on our management platform, we have an alert icon here that says, hey, the Credential Auditor has detected that the firewall is using publicly known credentials. You got a creative report that says, hey, these are the things that you have to change, and we will go through that process. Now, for the purposes of the demo, what I have here is a view where you can see devices across the tenants I have. And for folks who aren't used to the terminology of tenants, it's just a hierarchy of how you can separate your products, based on your businesses, based on your locations, based on your customers, etc. So the way I'm going to showcase this demo is first take a device that does not have any alert notification, create a user on it. So let me go to this device here, create a local user with a very weak passphrase. As soon as I commit and deploy the change, i.e. make the change, we have a trigger-based mechanism that checks the database to ensure if the password is good, you get no alerts, no notification, no emails. But if the password is weak, you then now are informed via a notification on our inventory page and via an email that, hey, you've created this local user or this IPsec pre-shared key or an LDAP bind that has credentials that are publicly found in a database, so you should change it. So just to continue with the demo, so let me create a demo user, just give it a simple password, click save. Once you save, there is a commit and deploy process on our management platform. So I'm just going to delete the older one and deploy this now. All right. So as this gets committed, you will see a status here, and we just wait for it to be rolled out. And as this gets rolled out, we in the backend have started a trigger-based scan where we've already contacted the database, took the hash of the newly created user's passphrase, matched it to our compromised publicly known secrets database. And then if it's clean, we get a clean. If it's not clean, then you have a UI element that says, hey, this firewall has a passphrase that is publicly compromised. So that comes up. Now, when that happens, essentially you now need a mechanism to look at all of the firewalls that could potentially have publicly known credentials on them, and then a way to remediate them. So let's just look at one of the reports real quick. So let me just generate the report. And this spans across tenants. You can do it for an individual device or across tenants. And as you can see, there are different credential types. So we spoke about the local user. So I just created a local user and with a very simple passphrase, which was flagged. And then we also have the IPsec pre-shared key that gets flagged if it's weak or is part of the publicly known DB, publicly known credentials DB, or even if your LDAP bind password is weak or is part of the DB. So these are very important to remediate. And more often than not, our partners and MSPs and MSSPs will see this with local user passwords, because as an administrator, you are going in and defining the IPsec, shared secret, and the LDAP bind. So the onus is on us, the administrators in this case, to ensure you're following good practices, good hygiene for credentials. But local users can choose to set up their own passwords. And that password could be in a compromised credential dump somewhere. So it's the onus then shifts on us to monitor that and ensure that we remediate them. So in this demo, I just have one here, but say for a typical for a typical business based on the firewall model and the number of users, say they could have 50 or 60 local users that might be present in the list here. And you're like, how do I go and change them? Do I message each of these users to change them, and then I wait for them to confirm? It's a whole help desk nightmare. So to avoid that, what we have on the NSM is the management platform is you are able to now reset passwords and say you want to do a TOTP unbind directly from the console without having to do it manually across your fleet of firewalls. So you can, so for the demo, I'm just going to uncheck the TOTP unbind. You can set a custom passphrase, and this will be shared across all of the local users that are available on the firewall. Or if you want to make the whole thing automated, you say, hey, auto-generate secure passphrases, hit commit and deploy. Before you hit commit and deploy, you go into generate report and see what random passphrases the management platform has assigned for you. You can download these as a CSV, send it out to your end users that, hey, your passphrase has been reset. This is the new passphrase. This is a burner password. So as soon as they log in with that, they will have to change passwords. And at that time, you can enforce good credential practices, good credential posture to ensure they are not creating simple passphrases or passphrases that are now part of publicly known databases that are compromised. So next is you do the commit and deploy. So let me just walk you through that as well. So each firewall is listed individually, and all of the local users in the firewall are edited, and we send out the new password for them. So this is completely automated. You just have to hit commit and deploy. Once you hit deploy now, it will take you through the cycle. And once it's deployed, basically all of these firewalls will not come up with the vulnerability notification, the alert notification for Credential Auditor, and you can close the loop on that. So going from, hey, there is this new user and he got flagged, looking at the report, to then remediating, you can do all of that from being in this just one single inventory page of our management platform, and you don't even have to leave the page, and do all of the process in about 6 or 7 steps. That's how seamless and easy we've made. And you can do that for individual firewalls by resetting the passphrases for local users in that firewall, or across a couple of firewalls, or across all of the firewalls. It's up to you. You can decide on how you want to do that. And that's the granularity we're able to deliver using the management platform. So this is the entire story or the journey around Credential Auditor and how we are able to give you observability and remediation just from one screen. The next option is auto updates. Now, auto updates are very critical, like Asif spoke about. We want to reduce the time between when the vulnerability is announced and the time we give you the firmware for you to upgrade them, reducing the window of opportunity for threat actors to leverage that vulnerability. So with, say you have a fleet of firewalls on managed by our management platform, you don't have to individually go into each firewall to configure that. You can just create a template, and this template can be used. Let me just call it auto update demo. I think I have one already with that name, so let me just run with one. And once I switch into the template view, it is basically a layout of what configurations exist on the firewall, but you can apply this to a fleet of firewalls. You go into firmware and settings feature, the settings page, and you are now just have few clicks and you can enable the entire auto upgrade journey. So check for available updates. Like Asif mentioned, you can stay on the critical update only channel, or you can be on our regular channel that has a few more releases. And then you can select download the firmware automatically when available, and then you can say, hey, automatically install this at a given schedule. The schedule runs on the device's local time. So based on your business's operational hours or your maintenance window, you can set a schedule. And if there is a new firmware which has already been downloaded, then at this given schedule, we will upgrade the build. And this entire process is hands-off, runs end-to-end without any manual intervention. You might even miss a vulnerability notification. If, say you're on a holiday and your IT staff is lean, you miss the notification. but you have auto update enabled, you will still be protected, and the end-to-end update process will take care of patching all the devices that you have. So that is those two items were what I wanted to demo. I will stop sharing and request Amelia to close this out.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Asif and Rakesh, for all that great information. Before we move on, I do want to highlight, what's new at SonicWall. For those current customers and partners on the call, make sure you are maximizing your SonicWall investment by upgrading to the latest firewall to really make sure you're staying protected as the threat landscape evolves. So right now we do have some great promos going on. You can find the link in the assets section of this webinar. And before we jump into the questions, I do want to highlight that we have a lot of great content in that assets section, a lot of which has been produced by the folks right here on this call, including, blogs and videos that focus on the features that you saw here today. Okay, with that, we have a lot of great questions coming in, so please, continue to keep them coming. So first question. Can auto update be set to delay X number of days in order to avoid any bad updates?
So you have an option to configure the schedule on the firewall itself, and based on that schedule, the firewall can install the firmware, and that schedule is in your control. But the firewall, when it notices, hey, there is a firmware available on a critical channel, which, as Rakesh demoed, your critical channel is enabled, and SonicWall released the firmware on critical channel, and if the options are enabled, we are going to download the firmware. But the implementing the firmware or upgrading your firewall to that firmware, the schedule is in your control, and you can define the schedule and make sure that, and the schedule will make sure that the firmware upgrades on that defined schedule, right? So one thing I do want to cover here as well is that our firewalls do have an auto rollback mechanism. If once the firmware upgrades and let's say the firewall fails to come online, it goes in a reboot loop. It boots up once, it boots up twice, it boots up 3 times, but it's not able to stay stable. Then in that case, what happens is it auto rolls back to the previous firmware, which was running on it, and with the previous known config. So we do have rollback mechanisms in place today as well, but of course this needs to be enhanced further, and which we are working on for future releases. And this will work regardless you're upgrading your firewall via NSM or you're upgrading it directly from the firewall itself.
Great answer. Okay, our next one is about Cloud Secure Edge. So how does the password auditing checking apply to users from Cloud Secure Edge, e.g. if they are using Entra IdP?
So we don't. So in case of Entra, in case of SAML, the password never comes to the firewall itself, right? So we don't know about it. Hence, there's no checking happening in those cases. What checking we do is in case of Radius or in case of LDAP. When Radius and LDAP authentication happens for an end user, during that time, the firewall gets the password. And when the firewall receives the password during the authentication phase, when we do the LDAP bind query to that directory or Radius, we that time convert that password into a hash, match it with a database locally on the firewall, and inform the user. In case of SAML, where we never know about the password because the architecture of how SAML operates is completely different, Credential Auditor doesn't do anything in that scenario.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Okay, are we able to have access to this publicly known database to show our clients? So basically, I think they're asking about the database that Credential Auditor cross-references against.
Today, we don't have any plans to make it public. to make the database public in complete transparency and honesty, but we can definitely double check and see if we can provide access to it. But we
Okay.
do get the database. Like our capture labs is constantly monitoring and builds this database while working with a number of third parties. So again, we could review it.
Yeah, and just to add to that, we have multiple feeds or thread feeds from dark web, a lot of popular databases. So we might not be able to share that IP, but if you have a specific use case, then we can definitely look into it.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, when using auto update, does the SonicWall restart or is there a scheduled restart? We have some customers who are 24/7 operations.
It's a scheduled restart. You define the schedule, and that's the time it's going to install and update the firmware. The control is at the end of the day in your hand on when you want the firewall to upgrade.
And that's largely controlled by the schedule that you set. So you can have the firmware downloaded on the device, not push the firmware upgrade, which will cause the restart. So that's the cycle, right? You do the upgrade and then there's a restart. So you control the schedule. And if the business is 24/7, then if you have a maintenance window, a specific time, you can manually do that instead of having a schedule, because the schedule runs over fixed intervals of time.
Okay, great. Our next question is kind of about best practices. So how frequent should we reset passwords just in general on the firewall?
So the industry standard usually is 90 days that every 90 days you should reset your passwords. So I would recommend going with the industry standard. There is an option on the firewall itself where you can, define, hey, you want your users to change your password every X amount of days, and you can configure that. But that's for the local users only. That for your radius or LDAP users, again, there's a config there, which helps you define that, hey, my user X, they need to change their password every 30 days or 60 days. But ideally, it's 90 days as per the industry standard. But we along with password change, we strongly recommend using multi-factor authentication to secure your users further, right? So, which is highly recommended for your remote users, for your admin users, and even for your local users as well, right? So, because that's a security add-on on top of just having a password.
Great. Yeah, that's exactly what, kind of CISA and NIST standards are saying. Okay, when will firmware update settings and schedule be available to use in templates?
They already are. So the demo that I just did was on the templates and was on the management platform template, to be precise. And you're able to do that today. You can control both the automatic auto upgrade feature, and within the auto upgrade, you're able to then control the scheduling once you enable the feature.
Great. Awesome. Just delivering right here on the call. Okay, does the password reset feature in NSM work with LDAP's integration? If so, is it able to determine password requirements when setting a default password based on the domain's group policy requirements?
Yeah, good question. It is slightly nuanced. If SonicWall doesn't have the users mirrored or added locally, there is no way for us to know the passphrases, like Asif mentioned. So we don't have end-to-end visibility and hence no control to report that, hey, this password is clean or bad. If the users are mirrored and are part of your firewall's configuration, they're mirrored locally, then we can scan them, but we still can't enforce the policy that you have in your Active Directory. So you still have reporting, but the compliance piece will have to be addressed through the AD. So
Okay. Okay, great. Um, for scheduled updates on HA pair firewalls, does it update the secondary, then fail over to the second, and then update the primary?
Yes, sure. So the auto upgrade generally works. It first updates the secondary firewall. Once the secondary firewall comes up and it's up and running, then it goes. Then the secondary takes the job of a primary, because we maintain that we have zero downtime during the upgrade process. So the secondary now, which is in an upgraded state, becomes the primary, processes the traffic, and then the previous primary, it goes and upgrades itself and becomes the secondary with an upgraded firmware. Of course, then you can go ahead, and there's a config called preempt, and you can switch it. The new second primary can become the secondary again. It's again based on what config you have configured in an HA. But but the usual behavior is the secondary will upgrade first, will be up and running, then the primary will upgrade and become the next secondary. So that's the upgrade process, and this is pretty standard across every other vendor, how they do it, how HA in general works. This is pretty standard with respect to that.
Perfect. Great answer. Okay. Looks like we have just maybe one more. How does NSM help improve time to response during active threats?
Yes, a great question. So with NSM, not only are you getting visibility to credentials, you're also getting visibility into your system logs, what logs in terms of analytics are traversing your firewall. And our management platform then becomes this command and control console where you can go in and see, oh, hey, I'm getting hits from X country, Y country, where I am not supposed to have any traffic from. And you then have a visual map of the attack landscape. And then from within the console, you can then perform remediation actions. And if we just have a minute, I can probably pull that up and show that live if we have time.
Yeah, I believe we have time. A few minutes here.
Yeah, just give me a quick second. Let me see if I can just demo that feature. So essentially, let me share my screen again. There we go. Okay, perfect. So you can, so there's this another new feature that we call advanced search. And basically now this helps you do deep dive investigations, look at what logs are being traversed across your firewall, what traffic is being passed, is somebody trying to attack you. So I have a honeypot. Essentially, this is a PC with a port forwarding for 3389, and I have actors who are scanning for that port and trying to see if they can get to the device itself. So this works for a good demo. And here you can make filters and make this search more detailed and figure out what is actually happening in the network, what is traversing through the network, and save this filter so you can just run back and quickly query this over a certain period of time. So I have some queries saved, so I can run them and say, oh, wait, just show me high risk categories which fall with policy violations for remote access, because I have the port 3389 enabled for IDP, and show me the traffic coming from a certain country. And it just happened to be that I had somebody scanning my PC from that country. So I can get that details, and your time to action now reduces because you can just go from here, click configure, create an access rule, and block this traffic or discard it based on whatever you want to do, or enable GeoIP and ensure that this country is blocked in case that's how you want to control it. So you're able to perform immediate actions as soon as you isolate it, all from the same page again, with very few clicks.
That's great. Thank you so much for that overview. Looks like we have one last question. Where is that report for the compromised credentials?
Oh, I was too quick to stop my share.
Yes.
If I go back, just bear with me for a minute here. Let me go back to my, just sharing my screen again. So this only pops up if you have a firewall which has compromised credentials on it. So if you are on NSM or management platform right now and you don't see this alert notification, then your firewall doesn't have compromised passwords on them, local user, IPsec, or LDAP binds. But if this pops up, then you have a generate report option. And then you download that report, and then that report has the details in it. So if you don't see this, then you're in the good for now. Till there is another breach and more passwords are added in the database, you have no action till then.
Awesome. Great overview there. Very cool feature. All right, well, that's all we have for today, everyone. As I mentioned, be sure to check out the other episodes in this Secure by Design series to see how NSM and SonicOS are embedding security directly into the engineering of our product. Big thank you to Asif and Rakesh for the great overview and the demos. And thank you all for taking the time to join us today. Have a great rest of your day.